Let's do it. Hello and welcome into the Section 109 podcast from Studio Breezy. I got a little Sir Mix-a-Lot action over here. He seems to be very concerned that I started the podcast with Bobble Juan. Matthew, I'm Breezy, and we're here to talk about a 1-1 draw that felt like a win. Matthew, how you feeling?
Shootouts are dumb.
Agreed.
But
when you win them, they're less dumb.
They feel better when you win.
Could not agree more.
And like I'm not coming around on shootouts, right? But I am coming around on things that improve the vibes, and shootouts after draws improve the vibes when you win.
Mm-hmm. So something that the Chat Hooligans did really, really hard in this one was we didn't even do the goal song. We started like cheering like PKs don't leave, PKs don't leave, and then we did the goal song and went, but PKs don't leave. Because last time versus Huntsville, I feel like about 25% of the crowd probably left against Huntsville that first game that we went to PKs. This one, I would say like maybe 10%, probably closer to 5% of the crowd left, which was really good because the vibes were even higher when we got it done.
Yeah.
And it was another great crowd. So
well, and you know, I think about a game like Orlando on the weekend. We've been in games where we've dominated every facet of the game and ended up drawing. And like it or not, like we are in this league and we play by these rules. And so getting that extra point, you know, means that it's only 1 point dropped instead of 2 points dropped. And every single point like that's massive when you're competing for now playoff positions. And, you know, that could be the difference between, you know, getting a home game in the playoffs and not. So
I think that I absolutely hate shootouts, like you said. I think
they're stressful as hell.
Adding and like adding an extra point on top of the other thing is just dumb. Because the rest of the world doesn't do it. Like I understand, like if we could go back and change it, we might do this the same way.
We would do 35-yard MLS penalties. Those would be like unequivocally better.
But like so I hate it, but here we are, and so I'm not going to sit here and like just go on and on about how bad it is. Like I'm just going to embrace that this is the league we're playing in. This was the rules last year. I think they were the rules the year before. They're definitely going to stay the rules at least for this season and probably forever. So let's just play within it. And
you know, I will say,
I think we have a massive advantage that other teams don't have at home. That first penalty gets missed because I believe because we're in his head, and everybody after that knew what was coming. But I don't think the first kick taker knew what was coming, and he skied that bad boy.
You know, two things. Number one, it's interesting. Like that's not like some 16-year-old that we just got in their head and they made a mistake for Orlando, right? That's like a 25-year-old who took that first penalty. Which is interesting. Like it's not just everyone is affected by penalties in some way, shape, or fashion, and like it's why it's a crapshoot because you never know what's going to happen. The other thing, I think I've come around, and I know that Leagues Cup does this. I think I've come around on killing extra time and just like go straight to penalties. And I'm talking to like, you know, World Cup, Copa America, playoffs, whatever it is, like. I think I like the idea of like just go straight to penalties. None of this two periods of 15 minutes.
I disagree strongly with that. The two 15-minute periods are at least semi-fair. Penalties are an absolute crapshoot, and I'm happy we came out on top, and that's why I'm happy for this episode. Because if we had lost that after dominating, if we had lost the penalty shootout, lost that extra point, boy would it feel bad. But here we are, top of the table, baby, 8 games in. Matthew, let's go over the lineup. So the lineup was Jean-Antoine in goal, Myler Garvanyan at right back, right center back Anatoly, left center back Duvon, left back Joseph Perez, central defensive midfielder Jude Arthur, and central defensive midfielder Andres, meaning we played with 2 6s again. That 4-2-3-1 is back, and I think it might be here to stay based on how we've played, especially defensively. Alex McGrath comes in when Callum was from where Callum was. A side note, we saw Callum after the game, and Bill saw Callum before the game, And he has a serious knee injury that we hope is not too serious, but like he was wearing a sleeve and not available this weekend. So
We'll talk about it in the mailbag.
I am worried about Callum. But Alex came back in and started at the 10. Right wing Taylor Gray, left wing Jesus, and striker Medi. Now subs were Jalen James in the 67th at left wing, but he actually played on the right, and Taylor played on the left.
No,
sorry, I haven't switched. He came in at left wing and stayed at left wing. Taylor played on the right the whole game, which was different. My bad. I was thinking about which way I was looking.
It's the same kind of setup that they went with against Carolina Core. Jesus on the left, Taylor on the right.
Gotcha.
Which is different from earlier in the season.
Yes, having Taylor on the right was the different part, and that's where I confused myself there. And then Carlos Rivas came in for Medi in the 75th, and Medi got his first goal in the 3rd minute. Matthew, you want to start with the goal, since that is literally the start of the game?
Yeah, it was really early, 3rd minute. I don't remember how the actual sequence unfolded because the replays only go back just so far. But the replay that we have is Alex McGrath under pressure and playing a ball out, it's not a long diagonal, but it wasn't like a short diagonal either. But he just plays out towards into space for JP, and JP just looks up, maybe takes a dribble or something like that. Looks up, finds Jesus. Jesus is doing one of those kind of like Mikel Arteta, like Arsenal-esque, where the runs where the wingers are start on the touchline, and they kind of cut straight in at an angle, and JP finds him.
It's an incredible first touch.
It's such a good first touch.
I don't know if he's shaping his. I'd have to go back and watch it right now. I don't know if he's shaping his body to go wide, and so the winger thinks, or the outside back thinks, but he just completely fools him. Takes that first touch, and he gains like 2 yards and beats a guy, and it's so good.
What is that? Left back, right back. The right back there slips. JP, I mean, like, or Jesus's touch, like, he's coming inside, and then he like just kind of takes the touch in such a way that it just like kind of pivots. And right there, he's got the outside back beat, and he's just running at a center back, and Medi's on the back shoulder there. And they just like timed the run perfectly.
I went back and paused it because I thought he was offside in live time. And I thought, I didn't see it live, but in watching at full speed, I was like, oh shit, he's offside. And then I went back and shot. He's not.
No, he's on.
It's perfect.
It's well-timed run from Medi.
It's a perfectly timed
It's a well-timed pass from Jesus. And then Medi just does the striker thing, like the keeper's coming out to close down the space and to take away the near post.
Takes away the near post angle, and he doesn't need it.
Medi hits it first time on a little bounce, by the way, which like sometimes like those things can just go anywhere, right? Great hit.
It's an instinctual finish.
He's got the far post all to aim for there, and just slots it perfectly, never in doubt. Knew it as soon as he hit it. And we're 1-0 up in the 3rd minute.
The wildest thing is he basically didn't celebrate. It reminded me of the old Mario Balotelli thing, where they asked Mario Balotelli, "Why don't you celebrate your goals?" And he said, "As a postman, celebrate when delivering the mail. I'm doing my job." And I'm not saying there's zero celebration in it, and like there wasn't a big jump. There wasn't. It was just like a little fist bump and back to business.
He is wearing wrist tape, and he's got something written on his wrist tape there. And his dad's in the hospital, or at least was at the time over the weekend, back in France. So that goal was in honor of his dad.
And maybe that's why he doesn't have a big celebration. Maybe it's, but I thought it was interesting that there wasn't a big like emotional
Club social media has this.
Do they
has a little video with him that it's for his dad.
But talking about why he didn't celebrate, or talking about
like his celebration was just like
kind
of a fist in the air, like with the wrist tape and towards the camera.
Well, that is less fun than my version, but also still very, very good. And shout out prayers, good vibes, all the things to Medi's dad. But what a way to start that game. And a note here that I have written down that I wanted to talk about is just briefly, Jesus started out on fucking fire. The first 20 minutes of that game, he just ran the game. The ball went through him. He created multiple chances. He beat multiple guys, and he was just absolutely on fire on that wing.
Also nearly killed Tom Gonzalez.
So I was going to get there. Yes, thank you. So Tom Gonzalez, shout out Tom, was on the hill getting food, getting a drink, getting something at a food truck, and Jesus hit a ball that went over the top of the goal. And was high, but was very hard, so it kept going. And we all thought it hit Tom, which would have been way funnier. Well, not way funnier. Would have been very funny, but it didn't. It missed Tom by inches while he was trying to, pay for his food, and hit the tip jar. And luckily, the tip jar was not glass; it was plastic. I was told, and it put water. It made it it rain literal money all over the hill. And you can actually hear it on the stream. You can hear a crack or something. You can hear a hit, and then you hear the crowd go, ah! And it's just funny to know that's what happened. Because I remember we looked up and we're like, oh, shit. But anyway, he bossed that first 20 minutes or so, and it was really nice to see. It was a little bit of that Jesus we saw when he first joined the team, and want to see more of that.
Yeah, I mean, Jesus had a good start to the season. He's up to 3 goals now. He's got a primary assist to go along with it now. 4 primary goal contributions in these 8 games, one of which he didn't even play in. So a real good start there. And yeah, he was lively. He was in control of that left-hand side of the field. And really, like, let's just go through the game a little bit.
Sure.
This was, so we've talked about some games this season where, we didn't necessarily, like, the possession game was pretty good, but we weren't necessarily getting into, the higher leverage type positions very often. And we've had some good finishing luck. We've been probably overperforming XG a little bit. We've rode our luck a little bit defensively at times. And
to be clear, not in every game or every circumstance, but in some key moments, we've maybe gotten some points we wouldn't have expected to get, or we've made a few stops that we didn't expect to make, or gotten a couple finishes we wouldn't expect to finish.
And this is the clear opposite of that. This was a great performance. 24 shots, only 7 were on target, which is a little annoying.
But 11 of them were blocked.
11 of them were blocked. We had 15 shots inside the box, which is a metric that we care about a lot.
It's a metric that even if the team doesn't, which they do, you and I care about a hell of a lot.
Partly because we have access to it now. And so, like, the chances that were created, especially in the first half, this is one of those games where
15 shots inside the box is fucking fantastic.
We'll look back at this and be like, man, that's really a point dropped, because the stuff that we created...
Well, it's actually 2 points dropped. It's just MLS has weird rules,
like
we talked about at the beginning.
The stuff we created, our traditional XG has it at 1.96 to 0.77. Analysis Evolves possession-based XG has it at 2.41 to 0.86.
So did the club publish that 1.96?
Yes.
Interesting. I love that they're now publishing it regularly.
That's Chris's number, because Sportech still does not have XG for us.
I'm just really glad that they're actually publishing his number, because I don't think they were last season.
On very small occasions.
Because you and I mean, Jed did it like 2 seasons ago quite a bit, and it was great. And then you and I were like asking like Chris, like, what was the XG? And sometimes he would tell us, and sometimes he wouldn't. Or sometimes he didn't have it, right? I'm not trying to say anything bad about Chris, but I love that it's out there. Like, more stats, please.
That's the live version as well. That's not the... Like, if he goes back and watches it, he might get a little bit different of a number, because just the rewatch is going to be better for that. Now, so, like, obviously, like, these numbers are good. Mm-hmm. These numbers are along the lines of what we want to create
every game.
And obviously, like,
we want to be above 2 XG. And if you ask Rod previously, he wanted to be above 2.5 XG, which is crazy. So
you look at these XG numbers, you need to remember, like, a shot that gets blocked because there's a person in the way, because it's in traffic, like, that's going to generate a lower number. So it's not like we had all these big, huge chances that are just getting blocked.
We had a couple
that helps you, like, milk your XG a little bit. Like, we also, like, generated a ton of good stuff. And, I think a lot of it comes down to just, like, finishing luck sometimes. We didn't hit the target a few times that we really should have. We weren't 100% perfectly clinical, especially I think on the break, that one moment in the first half.
It's more than one. We had several on the break that I think we would want back. I'm just not
I'm just not worried about it.
I'm just not worried about it.
That's a really good performance for chance creation.
And we're early on in the Rodcess.
And it's still early on, especially with a bunch of new players. And like this is a good performance. And we'll look back, heading into this road swing here. I'm looking back at this Orlando game and saying this is a really good step in the right direction. And it's 2 points on top of what was more important, which was taking a step forward in the chance creation department. So, just we got a question about it. I'm not going to put it in the mailbag portion, but someone asked, like, was that PK? Like, did it really not cross the line?
Did you also pause it on the line?
The best angle we have is that ball is on the line and the whole ball is not all the way across. It's not a great angle for us, but like, as far as I can tell, like it was a decent call. And the official was literally right there.
So in live time, I thought it was like watching, because I missed, like I said earlier, I missed the first goal. I had my back turned. I was handing out Ricolas, handing out performance-enhancing drugs. We usually don't score in the first 3 minutes, but we did, and I missed it. And so when on rewatch, I thought that he was offside. Obviously, paused it. On the penalty, I was like, oh, shit, that was in. But thank God. I thought it was a yard in, but like, thank you. No, I went back and rewatched and paused as well. And it is inconclusive at worst, but I think it's on the line as well. And the ball has to be completely over the line. And I don't believe it was. And it doesn't matter because, number one, there's a referee standing right there.
Yeah.
And number two, if it was, sucks for you. Sucks to suck.
Yeah. Is there anything else you want to talk about from the game? I'll note two things that are interesting. Number one, we only made 2 subs.
Yeah, I was going to come back to that. That was...
But like...
I did the whole sub thing last week, and then we only did 2 subs.
Yeah.
I do think it's a little different because we were chasing a game. I realized we were tied, but we were really, really trying to score. And so it was and with Callum being hurt, I would suspect that maybe Callum would have made in those substitutes for somebody. Because Andres a little more defensive player, Callum a little more attacking player. Maybe you would have seen that sub, or maybe you would, if Alex were tired. I don't know that he was, but like you could have seen Callum as a midfield sub. You also could have seen Luis, but you didn't. So I don't know if Luis is fully healthy or if he's carrying a small injury. But outside of that, like we did make 2 attacking subs. Like to go chase that game. So it wasn't we weren't.
Taylor, Alex, really the whole, definitely the back. How many players is that now? The back 7, if you include 2 6s, the back 4 and the keeper, and then Alex and Taylor, the 2 kind of more attacking minded players that did not get subbed. They look full of energy. Like they were still going.
I mean, Taylor barely got...
Jesus looked tired.
Taylor barely got the ball in the first half because Jesus had the ball the whole time. So like, I get it. Like it was Taylor's half the second half and Jesus' half in the first half.
And obviously Mehdi was running around like a crazy person.
It was
that
the best.
Entire game. And then Carlos came in and showed a lot of energy and life, and so did Jalen too.
Mm-hmm.
I thought those 2 guys. I think you could
we
tell.
Were unlucky not to score.
I think you could tell that those guys like really wanted to maximize their moment in this game, and that's a good mentality to have, and I suspect we'll see both of them a little bit more as we move into this 2-game road trip.
Also, hello from YouTube. If you're not watching on YouTube, we are on YouTube. Likes, comments, and subscribes. Those make us very, very happy as podcasters. So just wanted to throw that out there. Matthew, I would love to talk about the upcoming watch parties before we go to looking ahead to the games, as Inter Miami is next, and then mailbag. Does that work for you?
Sure.
So watch parties, there's the official club watch party, as some of you probably know, but in case you don't, there's what's called the Cheers Collective. That is a group of establishments in the Chattanooga area that are showing games every single time they are on. That is my understanding. I've only been to the one of them, but then they have a rotating official quote unquote watch party for CFC. The official one at Shady's Corner is at Shady's Corner at 5 p.m. And then the next one is at following that is 7:30 Wednesday, May 15 at Southside Social. I think that we as a podcast should go to the Moxie. And anyone that wants to come join us there should come do it there. I like the Moxie. I would love to watch a game there, and I'd also love to watch a game with some other big old fat nerds. Skinny nerds are also welcome, but a bunch of nerds.
Okay.
You in for that? Little Friday at 5 p.m. Have a few chat hooligans.
I think I could be
A few Chattahoochee loggers, I mean.
I think I could be we're gonna eat a couple fans.
So
yeah,
dumb.
I'm in for that.
English
I'm in for that. That sounds fun.
English is bad. All right. Okay. Mailbag. First question. Matthew, do you know why Apple won't let us rewatch games on MLS Season Pass?
The short answer is Apple and MLS had no reason to believe before this year that like people might actually care about two teams. That's the short answer. Year one of the Apple deal was last year. There were no independent teams in MLS Next Pro. It's just one of those things, like the MLS is the priority for them. And, it kind of sucks because we have to be the guinea pigs here, but it's on us to make them understand that more people actually care about this thing and take it seriously. And honestly, like our biggest problem is not the lack of replays, although it matters a lot. Our biggest problem is where Next Pro is in the Apple menu.
Bingo.
On Season Pass, which is all the way at the bottom. And even for live, like even live happening then games are at the very bottom of the Apple menu. And that needs to change, especially when Next Pro is going on and there are no MLS games being played.
Yes.
It should be like live games
should be at the live game tab.
Should be at the top. Just right there.
I agree.
Interested in Season Pass.
I shouldn't have to scroll down 15 menus.
There's a Next Pro game on. Like that should be something, like the live sports should matter. And obviously, like,
stop half-assing it, Apple.
Yeah, that's they've got to make this better. And I will. I know that the club is trying to do what they can on that front, with what little power they have. We'll continue to every time we see Charles and them, like I'm sure we'll bring it up. If anyone at MLS, especially MLS Next Pro, listens to this podcast,
you're an idiot. Don't do that. Don't listen to our podcast.
But
you're getting dumber.
But also, while you do, fix these things, please.
And fix the first of all, fix the XG. Let's get that first.
Yeah, I don't know why Sportech is struggling, but that needs to stop.
So Kyle has a question that's related to this, and I bet you don't know what these words are. But does anyone know how to crack the HDMI DRM for bootleg replays?
I don't know what those words mean.
So I kind of do. Know what the words mean, not how to do it. Kyle, hit me up. Are you in the Chattahoochee Slack? I don't know if you are. If you are not, message the podcast and I will get you added, because there's some people there that may or may not have that expertise and may or may not have that same desire. There was a conversation recently about it. And then if you are in the Chattahoochee Slack, just message me there and I'll put you direct contact there and see, because I need to put some of y'all big old nerds together to figure it out, because I'm a big old nerd about a lot of things, but that is a little outside of my my technological things. I have a question that I actually have an answer to, Matthew. Why did Jesus try to decapitate me at Mac's Food Truck from Tom Gonzalez? It's because he saw how good you look and he wanted to rain money on you for how good you look. That's a fact.
That's fun.
That's what he said when I saw him after the game, or something like that. Our 90 and 15 showed our formation as a 4-2-3-1, but FOTMob showed us as a 4-3-3. Which one is more accurate? Another question from Tom Gonzalez.
I'll take this one. So, trust the 90 and 15. Trust the Apple.
They haven't been wrong yet. Shockingly.
No, they haven't.
They had a midfielder switch for another midfielder, like in the formation, like week 1 or week 2. They had one time, but I think or maybe it was left and right. I don't remember. But
it was left because there's
no guessing which one. Yeah,
when we put in like the 4-3-3, like Apple's graphic does not delineate the McGrath, Jude in the middle, and then so let's say it's Andres, right? If they were playing, a 6 and 2 10s, for example, like it just shows as a flat system, which is,
I think it's
annoying because
I think it's just a choice of how to put the names on the screen.
Because we're putting it in as a 4-3-3. We're not making the choice to put it in as a 4-1-4-1, which would be, for visual purposes, for I guess what's available for them and the choices they have available to them, a 4-1-4-1 may be more accurate when we're playing with 2 10s and a 6. But I really like the 4231 now is like is more accurate. And I will note for you, FOTMob is powered by Opta, which has access to MLS data, but like MLS's official data is through Sportec, which is a different company. So like sometimes those things are not 100% the same. You if you look at NextPro's website for game stats from a particular game this weekend, it will not be 100% the same for Sportec's data and for Opta's data. And I don't really care about that, if we're being honest, because we have access to data now. So like whatever, we'll figure it out, right? But that's kind of why. And like because FOTMob is powered by Opta, it's one of the reasons why you see all these like first initial, last name, especially for younger players that have not been in FOTMob's system before. It's just because like the data provider, it's not as clean as it is for, say, USL, whose official data provider is Opta. So,
yeah, no, I get that makes sense. I also just think, to sum up a lot of what you said and how I think about it, is just MLS lineup graphics on the 90 and 15 just haven't been wrong yet. So until they start being wrong, like, go with them, because whatever kind of research they're doing, I guess they're talking to Rod before because the announcers usually have like a little anecdote or two, so I guess there's some kind of phone call happening.
I imagine there's also some like, state media functionality for it. So like input your stuff into this way, how it's going to be.
Sure, but I with the little anecdotes, they're definitely talking to Coach Rod at some point during the week. And unlike previous iterations, which I think we talked about last week on the pod, like there's some good research being done.
They're not leaving those graphics up to a producer just to figure out. Like
Correct.
Stuff is being inputted into their system in advance.
But they're also just like choosing to do a good job with it for whatever reason. Where FOTMob's just relying on some other data source that is not talking to Rod necessarily.
Yeah, it's getting. What I'll tell you is like the stuff that's showing up on the graphics for Season Pass is the same stuff that's showing up in I believe that's showing up in Transfer Market and showing up for FOTMob. Like all these data providers are getting the information and they're doing normal and right and good things with it. Although I can't see our latest game.
I'm guessing Sportec has it first, is my guess.
And then it gets filtered out.
That's my guess.
From there.
Matthew, what lineup changes might we see due to injuries? Tom Gonzalez. And the injury report, Callum, Jesse, etc. So we saw Jesse was in street clothes. Callum was also in street clothes. What do we know? And what kind of changes do you expect to see?
Yeah, so, well, let's just get into it. Callum has torn meniscus. And it's not... So, like, the main storyline is that we really don't know, like, beyond a torn meniscus, like, what we're looking at yet. It's not abundantly clear if he needs to have surgery to repair, if he's going to have surgery to just clean up things a little bit, and as such, like, what the recovery process and the timeline for return to play is. Having gone through this before,
it could be weeks, it could be months, it could be a long time.
So like the rough answer here is like you don't need your meniscus necessarily. Meniscus is a cushioning feature for your knee.
Jean-Antoine played a whole season with a torn meniscus last year.
So like it's a cushioning feature. So if your meniscus is just like gone and done, then you'll feel more pain, you'll feel more pressure, but that's kind of a comfort level thing. And like some people, stop running because it's just not worth it anymore. It's too painful, whatever it is. But we're talking about pain tolerance here. However, if you can repair it, then you're looking at, being out for a while because they want you to stay off of that, not walk on it for a while, which could be, 6 weeks or something. In which case we're obviously looking at, no contact for 6 weeks and then some sort of like, rehab period. That's a much longer term injury. And so the short answer for Callum is we're not 100% sure yet what's going to happen. And that'll be a decision that I think he'll make with the medical staff and the coaching staff to figure out what's best for him and what obviously he can tolerate, and they'll go from there. I don't expect to see him on this road trip, although like crazy things happen. As far as Jesse's concerned, I'm not actually 100% sure what happened to Jesse. Do you know?
I don't either.
But he was using street clothes for this one. It doesn't sound like he's going to be out for too terribly long. And in addition, you've got Minjay who re-injured his same ankle or foot right before the Carolina Core game. I think they're still waiting on figuring out like what the severity of that is, when his, did any like significant damage happen, or is it just like it hurt real bad for a while type situation. And I think that'll influence his return to play. But, unfortunately, the injury bug seems to have bit us a little bit in this first portion of the year. And that happens in pro sports and happens in soccer. And I think this team was built with a little bit of depth in mind, because these kind of things do happen. And
I would argue, so
we'll see where.
I would argue we're not really feeling the effects of it for the most part yet. We're really lucky that the two positions so far that we've got injuries in outside back and midfield, like they're kind of a rotation. There's 3 players for 2 spots at outside back, and there's been 4 players, or 5 players for 3 spots in the midfield. So like losing a player for a temporary amount of time in those 2 positions, while it's not good, like we haven't felt that so much.
Yeah, and in Minjay's situation, you're talking about...
And Minjay hasn't played a single minute. He hasn't.
You're talking about an outside back or a winger.
He's a winger, sir.
So you've got a player that could add into those positions, but because he hasn't featured yet, we still haven't really felt. We haven't felt that a ton. I do, well, we'll see. We'll see what happens.
So what lineup changes do we think we're going to see? I don't think we'll see any. I think the lineup we just saw is likely to be the best lineup going forward, at least for the next few games. Does that mean we won't see a change or two? Definitely not saying that. But I think the easy answer is like if Jesse can't go, you're going to shift Milo to right back where he's been subbing in when Jesse's picked up small injuries, or he started a couple times as well. So, I think that's a pretty easy plug and play replacement there, except for he's left-footed, not right-footed. And then JP can just come into that left back spot where Milo was. And then in the midfield, like Callum hasn't been a regular nailed-on starter. He did start the one game and looked very good for the first half before he got subbed out. But you're not losing a starter there, so I just don't expect, yet a starter at least. So I just don't think we're going to see a lot of change there. Now you have 4 midfielders for 3 spots, and hopefully Callum comes back soon, but I just don't think in the short term it's a big lineup change issue, if that makes sense. Matthew, is there anything new or noteworthy from the women's team?
We haven't had any more player reveals in a couple weeks. So I'm not really 100% sure where like the rest of the roster is yet. If we have any more kind of players from outside being brought in or augmented with local players. I will note, though, as we record on Tuesday, May 7, with a likely release date of Wednesday, May 8, players should be arriving within a week, which is really awesome. That means they'll be in here for about 10 days before the season opener. And obviously, we're incredibly excited for the women's team to get here and for
cannot wait for the road trips and for everything else, but also the road trips,
for practices to get going and for their season to get underway. I will note there's been a lot of social media and email marketing that you've seen. Hopefully, the women's team chalk talk and jersey reveal.
I was gonna say, what word are you saying here?
Yeah, who knows? Will be on Wednesday, May 22. Ahead of their season opener on Friday, May 24 versus Nashville Rhythm.
Mixie.
And for the same, hey buddy, come on. Hey. For the same reasons that last year's 2-2 draw against Nashville with the comeback was so special. It's a massive game early in the season.
It's the measuring stick,
and this is how we know where we are. In a short 8-game season, every single game, every single point matters. And obviously we have higher expectations for this team. We've declared higher expectations heading in, and it'll be a massive opportunity up front to see where we are, and if we start out all along that path, or if we have some work to do.
So I think you and I will have a bunch of work to do in previewing the season around that 5/22 date. That 5/22 date, I think, is going to tell us a lot. See the jersey. It's the summer league, so sometimes these summer commitments can be a little finicky. And I haven't heard of anybody dropping or whatever else, but I also haven't heard of anything in a while. But we know from the NPSL days where we didn't get a roster till the day before, sometimes the day after the first game.
Listen, if you could make that chalk talk with Tommy Salsa on the 22nd,
you got to.
That's real important, because the opportunity to ask questions, how do you think you're going to line up, formation, style of play, who some of these players even are, what kind of positions do they play? Where can we expect to find them on the field? When you get college players coming in, on the amateur scene, it's really tough for fans. It's really tough to have a good feel about, okay, this player is this position that can do these kinds of things. We're kind of flying blind here until that Nashville game. So, attending Chalk Talk, getting an opportunity to ask questions, getting an idea for what to expect to see against a live opponent 2 days later, it's huge.
And I think we're going to find out in that very first week who we are.
Yeah, quick.
So why don't other teams allow flag/tifo or drums from Ross?
Because they're dumb. Look, I think there are some teams out there that just take whatever rules they already have, and if they don't, maybe at their MLS stadium they'll have a flags only in the supporters section, nowhere else kind of rule, and when they have their second team wherever it is, without maybe a defined supporters section for home and away, it's just a lot easier to issue a kind of a blanket ban of, we're not going to allow these things.
They've also just never had fans.
They've also just never had fans, and especially away fans.
These two teams don't have fans to begin with, much less.
So
they don't have supporters, rather. They have very few fans and no supporters.
Crown Legacy, there'll be, maybe 1,000 people, 1,200 people or something like that. A lot of kids from the academy, a lot of families.
Can't wait to go to the Stumplex.
I cannot wait to go back to the Stumplex. It's a different vibe. And again, I'll say it, we're the guinea pigs here. We are the ones blazing a trail for this league and for their interactions with independent clubs and actual supporters and a fan base that cares, and and it's not terribly fair to us, but we're the ones that just have to push the issue and make it better for everybody else.
I'll also point out there's a home field advantage piece to it. And I don't think most of these teams are thinking about that. But in general in sports, especially in lower division soccer, there is we don't allow the opposing team, and Detroit City, who are, thought to be very fan friendly, don't allow supporter privileges beyond I think it's one drum, one flag, or maybe it's no drums and only flag. I can't remember, but it's pretty restrictive and pretty dumb, in my opinion. So a lot of these teams are not about growing the game. They're about home field advantage too, if they're an independent club. So there's a reason we're going to see, I think, going forward, this be an issue for supporters and an annoyance for supporters on our end a lot. But it is what it is. So it's another reason to be thankful that Huntsville has been cool with us.
Yeah.
And be hopeful that Atlanta/Kennesaw will get their shit together and stop being terrible and annoying. And also that a lot of more independent teams will get in the league. So there are, like you said, more independent teams trying to travel. And, imagine a Jacksonville road trip. I don't know if it's been published anywhere yet, but the front office thing is that they're going to allow whatever we are allowed, last I heard. So if we are allowed drums and flags away, our front office is going to allow the same number of drums and flags for traveling supporters. Right now, there just aren't many or any traveling supporters. But if Jacksonville comes in as an example, or if Huntsville ever like travels a significant number of people that involve like drums and flags and whatever else, like there's an opportunity for reciprocal things. There's also an opportunity for clubs to change over time, and learn and grow. And like when we demonstrate that, hey, we're going to be responsible. If you give us rules, we're going to abide by them in general. Like we're not here to create problems necessarily for your team on the field, not for your fans. Like all of those things hopefully will allow us to have more supporter privileges as time goes on. But yeah, it's dumb and it's annoying, and we just kind of got to work through it. We're used to walking into places that had no idea what was coming, and these teams don't know what's coming, but they have like actual security guards and shit, so it's pretty annoying.
I will also add, like, it's just better to be closer to the games for traveling purposes. Like I would rather be able to be there than like always have a drum or always have whatever.
Also, in NISA, there was a whole lot of games where it was you and I, and then there'd be a couple people that were local, or two or three other people that traveled. But like, there wasn't a lot of like taking drums to close games, because there wasn't any close games. Savannah, obviously, we were able to, and a bunch of the women's games we were able to. But like in general, in NISA, we didn't run into this in part because we weren't even asking for supporter privileges. Now, and my rule,
we were just asking for a ticket link, which wasn't always available either.
Correct. So my rule,
looking at you, Bob.
My rule for myself is like, if we have more than 10 or 12 going closer to that 15 supporters, it's worth having a drum and pushing really hard for that. If you got 6 or 8 or 10 people, under 10 number, like it's more fun to, yes, we'll do some chants here and there, but like don't have a drum. If you've ever seen a visiting supporters group, or the home Atlanta United 2 supporters group, it's embarrassing to have a drum and 6 people. And so I think there's also a little bit of like, we're traveling in larger numbers because they're closer, so now it feels bad. But also like, look, this is, if you feel slighted,
just sing louder.
And let's make him fucking feel it. Matthew, were we bad at finishing, or was Orlando good at defending and killing our chances from Jeff Clymer?
I thought Orlando was pretty good at defending. I mean, they really had, they put some numbers behind the ball. We were able to advance into attacking positions, and yeah, they defended well. They defended in groups. I think we were a little unlucky not to bury them when we had the chance. And as they got a little bit more belief as time went on in that game, it got harder and harder and harder for us to find the clear looks of space. I think that's when a lot of the blocks ended up occurring.
15 shots inside the box, 11 blocked.
Yeah.
That should tell you a lot of like, granted, yeah, could we maybe take it a half second earlier? Like there's some things you can do to change it, but there was a lot of very good last ditch defending and goalkeeping going on in that game. More than I would say normal. Actually, a lot more than normal.
Yeah. Yeah, you can do that one.
We have a lot of midfielders, Russ says. How would you stack up their strengths? That is, tactically, when can you see using one over the other? This is a fun one.
Yeah.
This is not who we like more. This is who do we think fits in the roles.
So
right?
I think pretty clearly now, Jude's a nailed down starter, right? I think that we've kind of shifted the formation a little bit to accommodate his inclusion in the lineup, not leaving him on an island by himself as the lone 6. You've seen the kind of a change from super inverted outside backs to playing a little bit more straight up, where like the outside back and the 6 is not like a combination you're really like stressing on. It's the outside back and the winger combination is where there's more action. And with the second 6, you know there's still numbers in the middle of the field. So I think something to look for. Andres has obviously been huge for us this season so far. I think his ability to play as a 6. Obviously, he was playing as a lone 6 early on in the season when we had inverted outside backs,
and before Jude got here,
and before Jude got here, his ability to be that second 6 and also sometimes that second 10, and kind of just do both seamlessly, given the moment, has been, I think, effective for us. And obviously that partially comes down to Alex and Callum's ability before he was injured to take on some responsibility in terms of becoming a lone 10 and working with. This is why having Medi as a 9 is so important for general chance creation for himself and others, because now you're working with not just 2 10s, 2 wingers, and a 9. You've essentially given yourself one less of a number, and now you augment that. Sometimes Andres is moving forward a little higher up the field. Sometimes an outside back is a little bit higher up the field. We saw Milo and at times JP, get involved into the attack. So it's just a different look. It's just a different feel. I think if you're going to have the ball for 70% of a game for whatever reason, or 70% of a time in a game, you might see the inclusion of someone like Luis, because he's that type of player that can provide that kind of that tempo and high leverage in the high leverage areas in the middle of the field. He can provide that extra pass that you need, or the incisive pass or something like that. I think there's a world in which if you need both a really good ball progressor with the dribble, and then a kind of a final pass type person, or more of like an attacking shots and goals and assists type 10. I think that's a combination of Alex and Callum might be really interesting. But I think we'll play a lot of more of a balanced type setup for most of this year, is my guess. And until unless we have like players that just fully separate themselves. Like if Jude, gets comfortable over time and becomes the kind of player that can just play as a lone 6 and dominate the midfield by himself. Okay, well, that's an extra body we can release into, whether it's Andres or maybe it's Callum or Luis, whoever. Like, you can kind of fully push them up. And if you're dominating games in that kind of manner, then you're forcing the other team to retreat further and further and further back. So yeah, I know I didn't 100% answer the question, but like that's kind of where we are.
So I'll take it a little differently. We have pretty different profiles and personnel policy, as we like to say on this podcast. Something that is your thing. We have one true destroying 6 in Jude. He thus far has not shown himself to be a super offensive player. And maybe that will come out as time goes on, but he has been just the destroyer, the guy who goes and recovers the ball, safe possession, makes the tackles. I mean, just very, very different than any other player. We have a really box-to-box 6/8. I realize he can do some 10 stuff. That's being Andres, but like he played the lone 6, and as you said, like that was a role he played. But to me, he's really looked very much in his element in that box-to-box 6/8 alongside of. And I'll get to this in my 3 key things, but I think Andres has been really good in that 6/8 role, and that's kind of really got the best out of him in my view. Then we have 2 8/10s in Alex and Callum, who both of whom can do probably that same role as Andres, but I would argue are not as good defensively, at least not as suited right off the bat to do that 6 part that sit next to Jude and just like do the destroying. So I think you have like 3 different like types of players there. Then you have a 10 in Luis, and then you have Ethan Korn, who's a winger now, so he doesn't even count as a midfielder anymore. So I think that you're going to see this 2 for a while, like you said, and then so that we're a little thin right now in that like our guys don't cross over as much. In a 4-3-3, the 8/10s are kind of the same. But when the true destroyer 6 is paired with somebody and you're playing a 2-man double pivot, I think Andres is pretty clearly one of them, and then Jude is the other one. And so I think that is my 3 preferred like tactically guys right now. It's exactly how Rod's playing them. I'm not saying somebody can't come in and prove themselves different. It's only 2 games, but I've loved what I've seen the last 2 games out of the midfields. And I've thought that the Jude-Andres combination has gotten the best out of both of them, with Jude covering for Andres on occasion and Andres covering for Jude on occasion, both in possession and in destroying. And I've loved that. And then I love the change of pace and Luis off the bench option. I hope Callum gets back soon so we have an additional changing guy. But I've also loved the freedom that Alex has had. Alex got out on the break, especially in that Carolina core game, just over and over and over again. Just into space and running the break. And I really love how that's stacking up. And I think tactically, Rod has shifted us into, Rod has made evolutions every season we've watched during the season. He's made adjustments. It was going to Marcus and wingers 2 seasons ago. It was changing a little bit how we did things last year. And then this year, I think maybe the big tactical switch is going to the 2-man double pivot. And
freeing up the outside backs to play a little bit more traditional outside back.
The outside backs were already doing some of the traditional outside back stuff, but now they can really stay up a whole lot more. So that's how I think of that. All right, one last question to Matthew. I'm going to let you run this one. Okay. This is a very good comment from Albert on the YouTube.
I also have one for you.
Oh, go ahead and ask me the one before that then.
So off the podcast before we started, I asked a question to you. And we decided it needed to be on the podcast.
Yeah, because I did not answer it.
So my question is, who on CFC had the most completed passes versus Orlando?
Fuck. Okay. Who had the most completed passes? Medi.
That would have been fun as hell, but no, not even close.
Okay. Well, do I get 3 choices before I strike out?
I'll give you one more.
Jude.
Jude is tied with among them.
Okay, tell me.
It was Andres and Jude. So your two sixes, and I note that because choosing from games where there was similar possession for us, and then kind of similar pass completion numbers.
Mm-hmm.
I think marks a little bit of an evolution in this team. So from like the center backs, Tolley, Duvan, Logan Brown was second in pass completions against Huntsville in the first game of the season. New York City away, Tolley and Duvan were the top 2 on the team. Inter Miami, the first one that we played at home, it was actually Milo, Duvan, and Tolley were the top 3.
This is fun. Milo might have been my next guess, by the way, after the 2 sixes.
Milo was tied with Alex for third at 48 completed passes. But what I'm saying is,
how many did Jude and Andres tie with?
62.
Damn.
But like Duvan and Tolley combined for 73 completed passes versus Orlando City. Versus Inter Miami, they were at 100 combined. Versus New York City away, they were, that's a big number. I can't do math. 135? Yeah, 135. Versus Huntsville, Tolley and Logan were at like 115, something like that. So that's a clear drop in number of passes. And what I think is interesting is when we were playing a little bit more of that kind of W, 2 center backs, a lone 6, and 2 outside backs, kind of providing support in midfield, and then having 2 10s, 2 wingers, and a Medi up top,
and a Medi.
There were
the strikers, not just a Medi.
There were a lot more passes from both Duvan and especially Tolley, I think, directly to a winger, especially like if Tolley to the right winger
or to the 10.
And I think in this system, the way the reorganization has happened, it's freed up space in the middle of the field to where they're not passing the ball back and the center backs aren't passing the ball back and forth like 4 or 5 times in a row, trying to draw the team out a little bit. Like we're able to go directly into midfield and then kind of play from there a little bit more easily. And I wonder if that's not also a little bit of some of these other teams recognizing how we're playing and trying to adjust by adjusting their mid block to be a little bit more compressed at the expense of ceding possession. Which is why I tried to take the numbers when we were closer to 55%. Because some of these other teams, like, will, when they get out, they'll play, they'll keep possession, they'll do whatever.
I'll also mention that when you play alone,
it's something we're early on, and this is game number two. Game number 2 of the 4-2-3-1.
Yes.
So like we're still a little bit early in how we're adjusting now to potentially personnel that we have available, and also how other teams are playing us. It's only 8 games in, so there's just so much sample that we have.
When you play a lone 6, it's a lot easier to mark them out of the game, whether it's Andres or Jude. And if Jude is sitting, a striker can or a winger can move up on him and they can mark out, but it's just much harder with 2 guys. Also, I wanted to mention that Jude has been really good in tight spaces, but it's with safe possession. He's not getting it in tight space for the most part, turning, beating 3 guys, and then playing a diagonal ball across. Like, he's doing lots of intricate, good work in tight, but when it was with the center backs and the outside back, there wasn't anybody on that next level to pass it to. And with Andres sitting next to him, those 2 are doing a lot of that.
There's a little bit of that intricate possession.
And to the center backs.
They're not like necessarily like, they're not bumping. They're not like Collins dribbling Frankie Martinez level, bumping it back and forth.
Nobody does it like they did.
But you're starting to see a little bit of some tight like 1-2s with Jude and Andres. Mm-hmm. And sometimes it's not like, Jude bumping it forward to Andres to play. Like sometimes it's Andres or Jude playing the 1-2 through Andres. And we've seen, when Alex has been involved in that, when Alex has been playing a little bit deeper, especially next to Andres, you've seen a lot of that because it produces a situation where Alex can then get on the ball and like dribble forward, take some space, and then go from there. And you have an evolution I want to watch for is Jude playing a 1-2 with Andres, and then Jude takes space, and to see what he does next, because it's on his highlights, but we haven't seen him do it with us yet. And I think if you start seeing something like that happen, that's going to make teams real terrified, because that's going to be like now you're 6, like you're marking your second 6, who's more of your ball progressor, with the pass, and you're the 10's already forward. But now if you're playing a 1-2 and all of a sudden like your destroyer 6 starts becoming a playmaker, like look out.
I'll also point out something we saw that I thought was interesting in this game is in some of those intricate exchanges. There would be 3 players. There would be a center back, let's call it, say, Toley. It'd be Toley and those 2 midfielders. And the 2 6s and Toley would interact. And then at some point, Andres would switch the play back across because they'd be pressing into that little triangle, would play it back across to Duvan, who then had space to take a couple dribbles and make a pass. We're different than we have been in some years where we have 2 center backs that can really pick a pass. And having 2 center backs that can quarterback into space, especially if our 2 6s are doing good work, and then freeing them up to get into space to pick a pass into that 10. The next evolution, in addition to obviously, like you said, Jude taking some space, might just be having our center backs up 5 yards further, picking out passes to the 10 and to the wing, having already beaten a couple guys with that first ball. Okay, take me through this question from Albert Matthew, and we'll answer it together, because I know you and I both have takes on it.
So this question comes from Albert, I think on YouTube, right?
It's on the YouTube comments, yeah.
He says, okay, first of all, Breezy, it's called football. Go check what CFC means.
Okay, I'm going to stop you there. Yes, so if you want, first of all, it's not the Spanish football in the name, but if it were, I'm fine with that. That is a legitimate way to call soccer something. What is not is the Queen's English bullshit where they call it football. It's soccer. We fought a war in 1776. So we didn't have to give a fuck what the English wanted to call it. So if you want to call it football, no problem with that. Not a Spanish speaker. I'll call it calcio if you'd like in Italian, but it's soccer.
All right. Well, that was something. It says, but to my question about the number 9, I guess the problem with X, you can still call it Twitter, it's okay, is that you need to keep things short. I am in no way was trying to say that he was or is bad. I think to make the comparison, I see similarity in tactics with Man City when it comes to forwards. Erling Haaland is a great striker, but this season it seems Pep is mainly using him for other clubs. I think you're referring to more of like a distraction type, taking up space, whatever. The opposite clubs must use 2 defenders to cover him, but he is a good finisher and can finish when the ball is given. At the same time, there are other players on the Man City team that can finish and will score. I think last year we relied mostly on our striker.
Agree with that part for sure.
We had a good striker, but that is why at the end of the season we could not score as easily as the beginning of the season, since other teams figured out and started to block him. The Savannah games don't count.
That is Savannah.
Although
erasure.
I would argue like the Savannah games are actually a great representation of a really bad team, like figuring out how to put numbers on Marcus and keeping him off the mark. Mostly. Overall, there is clear growth in the club, and I just wanted to see if I'm going crazy or if there was a change in tactics. I'm not as smart as Matthew.
That's bullshit. You're way smarter.
So I just wanted to see what you guys think. Thanks for a great podcast.
Thank you for the kind words. Okay. So where do you want to start with this one? Because it's multifaceted, and I think you and I both have multiple takes on this. We talked briefly before the pod.
I think we start with the Holland comparison, because
First of all, it's the Netherlands.
I don't think it's necessarily like Rod takes great influence from Pep Guardiola, right? But I don't think the Holland comparison necessarily rings true for me, because you're talking about like one of the 2 best strikers in literally the world. And maybe more importantly, of the 2 best strikers in the world, Harry Kane, Erling Haaland. Haaland is a physical fucking freak. He is a toy that you put the ball near and watch him score. You don't have to be nearly as good with your service with him, because if you just get the ball in like a rough vicinity, like he is, how like close doesn't count unless it's like horseshoes and hand grenades.
Or Erling Haaland.
Erling Haaland is a hand grenade.
Yeah. He's unbelievable.
And, like he's not there taking up space. He's the best striker in world football. He's an absolute physical freak. Like, you have to mark him with
2 guys.
With 2 guys and like have them be armed. And like, I don't know, the Swiss Guard could mark this guy. Of course other guys are going to have space. Like that's part of the fun of it. That's why you pay $1 bazillion for him. It's why only an oil nation state can afford to buy him. Like it's just one of those things. I think I understand where you're going with that though. In that, Mehdi is a different type of profile of striker compared to someone like Marcus or other forwards we've had in the past. Like, yes, he's big, he's physical, he can put his back to goal. You can play him to feet or to his chest with a defender behind him, and he can hold that ball up. He can lay it off to a 10. He can lay it off to a winger. We've seen moments where he'll check down a little bit deeper into midfield and receive a ball from the center backs, and sometimes bump it right back to the center backs. But the act of doing that now has a defender right up with him, and now that defender's got to rotate back for the opposition team to maintain their shape. And rotations don't always happen as quick. Rotations back do not always happen as quickly as the rotations in, and that allows, has the outside back covered for that center back who just entered midfield to follow Mehdi. Like, did the outside back cover that space? Did a winger drop to cover for the outside back space? Is there now a moment where Taylor can run in behind? Because none of these things happen in a vacuum. Like, you want someone to pull someone out of position so someone else can run in. And if you're coached by an Antonio Conte, like that's a classic pattern of play that plays out, and everyone knows it's supposed to play out, and this is how you play in these types of situations. I think for both Pep and for Rod, they want players to express themselves instinctively on the field, to do what they are comfortable with, what they don't have to think about, they just do. And when you're a winger and you like to get in behind, you like to combine or whatever, you see Mehdi start to drop to look for the ball in possession. okay, what's happening? What's happening around them? Is there a run in behind that maybe you can make? Do you have to time that effectively so that you're not going to be 30 yards offside by the time that a player is able to start looking to play that ball? All these things go into it, and I understand the comparison though. Like it's not necessarily wrong.
It's just not fair to compare Erling Haaland to anyone in the world. Is that where you're going?
Basically, yeah.
So I think like the first part of the question is we are being a little nitpicky and like, rejecting it or having qualms with it or whatever else. But I think the second part of the question is at the same time, there are other players that are on Man City that can and will score. And I think it says, I think last year we relied mostly on our striker. We had a really good one in Marcus Nagelstead, all-time leading scorer for the club for a reason. But that's why at the end of the season, it became really, really hard to generate goals. I agree mostly with that. And I definitely agree with the idea that we are playing very differently by choice, but it's not just with the striker, right? The striker allows us to do different things, but like the fullbacks playing very differently changes. So, I think that as much as we're being picky about the first part, the second part of the question, I do agree with. We've changed how we played.
There's also just more space to play with right now.
Yes.
You think about Nisa, like these teams were packed all in, and that's not a shot at these other teams in Nisa. Like that's just
they were terrible.
That's what you do when you're overmatched. Like,
and they were terrible.
You pack it all the way in, and you force your opposition to just be better, and like. You make it so hard for them that they have to be so clinical and so sharp to be able to break you down. And then you let the football chips fall where they may. That kind of situation might occur against us this year, especially in a kind of a playoff environment. I would assume, but by and large, these teams. The gap in quality between players and teams is not so big that they feel like they have to play a 5-4-1 and sit all the way deep and like attacking be damned. Like we're just going to defend and maybe some weird shit will happen. Like these teams have good players. They have, good principles, good setups. Like it's quality competition, and thus they're going to come out and play. And because they're going to come out and play, and because they're all pretty good, and they've got eyes on the first team, and they've got eyes on like personal growth, and they need the reps. They're gonna come out, which means that there's going to be more space, and you saw that with Medi's goal against Orlando. We're able to generate with some good play and build up. We're able to find there's some space to work with. There's space for a player to run it behind. No offense to Marcus, but like. Running, like being on the back shoulder of an attacker and running in behind is not his game.
He would tell you that. By the way, he could have done it in a little more often if he ever had any space at all.
But he never had space to operate. And not just...
Like that finish that Medi makes, can Marcus make that? Absolutely.
Sure.
If Marcus did the same ball, he probably finishes the same way. But there's the hard part is... It's a little bit apples to oranges on who we're playing last year versus this year, which you just said.
100%. It's like apples to, friggin'
not only is Medi more...
Bananas.
Apples to bananas, there you go. Apples and oranges are both round. I was going to make a penis joke. I'm a mature adult. The running in behind thing is more Medi's game, number one. And then number two, like it's just we are playing, like you said, a fundamentally different, not only way that we're playing, but a fundamentally different like set of like opposing principles. And as we play forward, I think we're gonna see a different type of player and a different type of play that leads to goals with and I have that in my thing, like with how our outside backs are playing, like with how we're taking shots, shots we're choosing to take.
We're willing to cross.
Yes. In the air, which we never did, ever.
Yeah.
Except for on corners.
Yeah.
You feel like we answered that?
I think so. Thanks for the question. Thanks for the questions. Thanks for always for the questions.
Yes, from everybody, but Albert, especially for that follow-up. I enjoyed that follow-up. Matthew, do you want to do your 3 key takeaways?
Sure. Number 1, 2 points after a dominating draw feels a lot better than 1 point.
No joke.
I don't need to go into any of that anymore today. Number 2, this was a really good performance for the Rodcess. I think we can take, even if we had just gotten 1 point out of it, we created a lot of chances. And that's really good because the chance creation outside of the outlier game against Inter Miami, the chance creation hasn't always been there in the amount of volume that we saw on the weekend. So, yes, it's frustrating not to take all your chances and then blow this team out. But the fact that we were creating chances is a positive development. And I think that bodes well for us over the course of a long season. And then the next thing, as we're starting to look ahead, and we can get into, ahead to the look ahead for how Inter Miami's form has been, how Crown Legacy's form has been. But we've got 2 road games coming up, with 4 full days in the middle of them. So it's not completely short rest. There is some decent rest. But it's a double road game. They're not coming back to Chattanooga after into Miami. They're using the swing to go straight to Charlotte. So these games are both on grass. We've not always been great on grass. We've sometimes been good. We've sometimes been bad. I don't know if the grass has anything to do with it. Or not.
I think you and I both know my thoughts. I think it does.
Yeah. So, but this is not going to be a typical customary week, playing a Friday and then a Wednesday.
Do you want to take us through the looking ahead portion as we go through this?
Yeah, sure. Inter Miami's first team is going to be on the road on the Saturday in Montreal. So there's a chance that and Inter Miami's gotten a little bit healthier in the month of May compared to when we played them a month ago. So it's possible that there's some more of those kind of fringe first team players with the second team.
Maybe, but I've been checking some of their lineups, and they've been taking some of those fringe first team guys with them on the road too.
Look at the last Inter Miami 2 lineup. It's a little bit different. I mean, hell, Noah Allen started in that game, which doesn't always mean that they're going to be world beaters. Anytime you introduce new players that are not accustomed to playing with a particular group, sometimes it does not go well. Or sometimes a big time first team player that needs to drop down and get 45 or 60 minutes. Sometimes they don't take it that seriously. And so it's a weird, Next Pro is a weird dynamic at times. But I would expect a few, as Inter Miami's gotten healthier.
They played a 3-4-3.
Yeah. I would expect a little bit different, a different look compared to what they showed in the April game at Finley Stadium.
You're very correct. That was a very different lineup. I hadn't seen this one yet.
And then that's because I did my research this morning. And then on the Crown Legacy front, do they, this is a team that won the East last year, and they won it pretty convincingly. And they were incredibly good. I will also note that they spent $3 million on a player to bring in, not this for this season, but for last season. Charlotte spent $3 million on a player. And they parked him at Crown Legacy for an entire year. They let him develop. They let him get comfortable. I don't know if the guy had any English beforehand or not, but obviously to work on the language. And they parlayed that guy into a U22 initiative signing for this season. They don't really have any of those kind of players this year. And so the team is it seems has taken a step backwards. But it's a Wednesday game. I don't know if Charlotte is playing on I suspect Charlotte is not playing on Wednesday as well. They'll be between matches.
You have it written here that Charlotte plays on Wednesday 5/8 versus New England.
Yeah, I'm referring to Charlotte FC, not Crown.
Oh, okay, got it. Sorry.
So we don't know if someone that doesn't get any minutes on the weekend, this coming weekend, do they drop them in to get some minutes on Wednesday night? Probably. I wouldn't be shocked. But also Crown Legacy, especially last year, did not involve a lot of first team players. They kept that Crown group together, playing a lot together over the course of the season. They might just be a little bit younger and a little bit worse this year and doing the same thing because they think it benefits them long term. We also I don't have a good read on it because it's Dean Smith's first year as the first team head coach at Charlotte FC. And with a different head coach comes different philosophies for how to integrate the second team. So he might want a little bit of a younger player base, promoting more academy kids rather than a higher level second team that can provide spot minutes here and there for the first team. We just don't really have a good indication. I'll note the form. So when we played in Miami, they were on top of the East.
Oh, how the mighty have fallen. They're in 8th now.
Or like second in the East or something like that.
They were first.
They had a win against New York City. They had a draw at Red Bulls. They lost to Orlando City B at the Generation Adidas Cup. And then they had beaten Huntsville. Then they played us and got demolished. And since then,
as happens.
And then since then, they've lost at New England and they lost at home to Red Bulls. So like their 3 wins, their 3 losses in a row now, coming up to play us to see if they can reverse their fortunes. I imagine those guys that played against us will remember that feeling and will be out for it. And that's going to be a tough challenge. It's a Friday. It's in May. It's at 5 p.m. That's going to be difficult.
Also, MLS Next Pro, fuck off with these 5 o'clock kickoffs. Like, so far, everything's been pretty good. Like 7 o'clock kickoffs for the most part, like, which is like reasonable. Don't have a 5 o'clock kickoff. Come on, dude. Take your 2 team a little more fucking seriously.
Yeah, seriously. On the Crown Legacy front, they opened with the draw versus Carolina Core at home. They followed it up with the draw versus Columbus Crew 2. Then they lost at Chicago. Then they drew at Huntsville. Lost to Orlando City B. Then they beat New York City on the road 3-1, which a little bit out of character. They lost at Cincinnati. They're going to play on Wednesday 5-8 versus New England. So, we don't really know where they are. We'll find out that game. But this is a team that struggled. And any team that struggles, we saw this with the Atlanta United 2 game. Any team that struggles a little bit, just that extra motivation when you're playing a team on top of the table to go take it on and prove that they can compete. Any lack, drop intensity, any drop in sharpness for us will likely be an issue. And we might just get footballed or we might just get beaten sometimes. Like, players and teams in this league are good. And anyone can beat anyone on any given day. And we've seen that already. So, I hope to see you guys as at maybe one of these watch parties. Maybe we're going to the Moxie. We'll be at Crown Legacy.
We shall be. Which
will be fantastic. Let us know if anyone's planning on going to any of those games. Breezy, let's get your 3 key takeaways.
I've got the Font Mob table pulled up here. And I just want to point out, hey, announcer on the Huntsville Philadelphia Union 2 game. Hey, fuckface, we are in first place, and we have the lowest goals allowed. He said that Philadelphia Union had the lowest goals allowed in the league, which was categorically not true, followed by Toronto FC. Also not true. So fuck off. That's independent club erasure. Sorry, I watched some highlights this morning, and I made me mad. Okay, my key 3, as that guy just caught a stray. The new extra point draw for shootout, it's very similar to your first 2, is big. I'm glad we got it. We already talked about it, so I won't dwell on it. But top of the table after 8 games is damn good, and I'm happy. If you'd have told me 8 games in, we'd be top of the table, I would have taken it no matter what the results were going into that, led into that. We're early on in this Rodcess. Trust the fucking Rodcess. Top 4 is still the goal for this season. Let's not get our like, if we lose these next 2 games and suddenly we're in 5th place or whatever, like, this is a reminder for myself and for everybody else. Don't get your head turned around backwards. Like, we want to finish top 4 and we want to get a home playoff game. Like, obviously we want to win the league, and I think we can win the league. But the league,
still the goal.
The goal is still and has not changed from we got to get a home playoff game and go from there, and hopefully win that home playoff game and keep going. But like, that's the main goal, and we are well on pace to do that. Number 2, the switch to 2 defensive midfielders was fun and good. I think this makes us stronger. The spine equals wins. I've said that before, and I've liked Andres. I said that earlier in this podcast, in the box-to-box role with his work rate and passing. We have 3 players on this team with pretty exceptional work rates. Last year, we've talked a lot about how JP's work rate is the thing that makes him special. He's good at basically everything, but like his work rate is spectacular. Medi has that same work rate as a striker, and you see it, and he creates things for other people, and it's fantastic, and I love it. And Andres has a similar type of work rate at that 6'8" position. He does a fuckload of running. He's around everywhere, especially recovering defensively, which is really, really important in this league when you have young players who can do magic. With all the young attacking talent in this league, the spine is going to continue to be the most important thing for us winning games. And the switch to two defensive midfielders, the 2-6s, just may be the way that we stay strongest in our spine. It's only 2 games in, but I'm very encouraged by it and very happy with it. And number 3, shots. We are shooting now much more often than we were in the past few years, and I love it. I'm not saying that I want us to be pulling up from 35 yards, taking bad shots, but when we are getting an even decent chance, between anything more than like solid or decent, we are pulling up and shooting if we get it. And yes, there's some times to be careful on the break and like take the extra pass to make the thing, but more volume of decent or good quality shots is going to lead to more goals for us over the long term. And I want to see that continue. The what would be 24 shots in this game, like that's good, but it's not the first time we've been pulling from a lot of places. When I say pulling, I don't mean irresponsibly pulling up and shooting. I mean, like, I've got an opportunity, I can put one on frame, whatever else. In another game, this game finishes 3-1 or 3-0. So, like, love it that we're shooting more. Love that we're getting the outside backs up to cross and to create some of those chances in addition to guys who are already doing so. And I'm just encouraged by where we are in the Rodcess again. So I think that's it. Matthew, anything left?
No, I'm good.
See y'all to Moxie on Friday. Peace.